Chapter 3, Fall 2002, Kindergarten. The first weeks. When I think back to those first weeks of school, the image that stands out most in my mind are the big blue eyes of the dark-haired girl sitting across the table from Cammie. Cammie was always a very social person, and her major concern, starting at a new school, was who her friends were going to be. She already knew some of her classmates from preschool. The one she really wanted to be with was her friend Hazen, who unfortunately got put in the other kindergarten class. Cammie's first assessment of the girls in her class were that they were a bunch of wild girls who were only interested in fooling around. It took Cammie a while to notice the quiet, smart, dark-haired girl with the big blue eyes sitting right across from her. Her name was Marley. I noticed Marley right away, and I watched as she slowly and quietly made her way deep into Cammie's heart. Even though Cammie's main concern was friends and how everyone would react to her being in a wheelchair, my main concern was that we had chemo treatments that first week of school and an MRI coming up next week. The first week, we had to leave school right after lunch every day and go over to the clinic for a few hours of chemo. This was Cammie's third round of irinotecan. She handled this chemo with no side effects, so she was able to handle going to the clinic and then going to school every day. This was the amazing thing about Cammie. I did not force her to go to school. In fact, I would have rather that she stayed home on her chemo days, but Cammie would have nothing of those suggestions. She was focused on what was happening at school, and chemo to her was just something she had to do in her spare time. When we went to the clinic, she brought lots of stuff to keep her busy and distracted. Then it was time to go home for dinner and some TV. Cammie got ready for bed early so that she could get up early the next day for school. She was in charge of her schedule. She started calling all the shots. I was exhausted from her busy schedule, but she just kept going. Before I get into all the wonderful aspects of Cammie's kindergarten class, I want to talk about some of the difficult moments at school in the beginning. Having a big wheelchair in an already crowded classroom was a challenge. Cammie's teachers, Molly and Jane, had a not a problem attitude, which helped everything tremendously. They spoke to the class about how to deal with the wheelchair and made accommodations so that Cammie could get everywhere she needed to go. Even with this preparation and acceptance, there were so many little things that happened that were difficult. One thing, that it was hard making Cammie feel part of the group. When everyone sat on the floor in a circle, Cammie was up high in her chair and felt separated. When everyone stood up for a stretch, Cammie felt bad that she couldn't stand up. When everyone went outside to run around, Cammie felt very uncomfortable and didn't know what to do. Another hard thing was how people acted around her. Very often people bumped her chair. Kindergartners bump into each other all the time, and it's very natural. They had to unlearn this habit, however, and be very careful not to bump Cammie's chair. Cammie was on Decadron, which made her very sensitive and moody. If someone did something or said something offensive to her, even if they didn't know it was offensive to her, she would get upset. In our family, we learned how to respect Cammie's feelings and considered her behavior normal. Her classmates had to get used to how she was, which took a while. The best thing about Cammie's personality at school was that she was incredibly smart and very funny. Overall, it didn't take her classmates very long to appreciate Cammie and to start accepting her as a regular friend. Picture day happened on one of the first days of school. I had a wall in the girls' bedroom devoted to school pictures. Every year, I proudly displayed their beautiful photographs and admired how wonderfully they were growing up. But this year was devastating for me. On picture day, Cammie's face was bloated and her cheeks were very red. Her hair had been falling out and was extremely thinned. For the class picture, she was so big in her wheelchair, she had to be put at the end of the front row. Luckily, someone put another chair next to her so that it didn't look so separated from the group. It was a very stressful day for me, and looking back, I think how silly it was for me to be stressed about how she looked. I should have been thankful at how brave she was not to care how she looked. Cami thought she looked beautiful, and she was so beautiful. As was the case for 2 whole years, I didn't have any time to dwell on that because it was on to the next thing. Her MRI was the next day. She had to wake up at 6 in the morning, not have anything to eat or drink, which was so hard for her on Decadron, and she had to go over to good old radiology for her at least 2-hour scan. She had to be sedated for her MRI because they lasted so long and she had to be perfectly still the whole time. She did great as usual. On MRI day, since she was sedated, I insisted that she stay home for the rest of the day. But this was a chemo day, so it was out to lunch and then to the clinic for chemo. The next day at chemo, Dr. Martel took Francois and me into a special room and talked about the MRI results. When he took us into a special room, it meant bad news. In this case, he had to tell us that even though this chemo had somewhat stabilized her main tumor, it wasn't doing enough, and we would have to try other things. I remember realizing on this day that we had a very long way to go and that Cami would be on this chemo for a whole school year or even longer. At home, we had immediate problems to deal with. Cami was getting very heavy and carrying her was becoming very difficult. By the time school started, she was up to almost 90 pounds. In order to get her into the house, we had to carry her from the car up the 3 stairs in the entryway and then up the 10 steps up to the first floor on our split-level home. We had a special chair with wheels for her in the house, so it was easy for her to wheel from place to place once she got up there. She could walk for short distances holding on to hands, too. She was very sensitive about who carried her, especially when she had her port accessed with the line hanging out of her chest. I could understand that because Papa was not very careful, maybe on purpose, when he carried her. Papa carried her as often as she would let him, but I ended up doing over 90% of the carrying. I started feeling pain in my knees going up the stairs. We had talked about getting a stair lift, and now we really needed one. Francois took care of calling all the medical people. It was better for him to do it, because I would lose my temper too fast and not get anything accomplished. It took more than 2 months of constantly calling people and all the paperwork to finally get that stair lift. I had been carrying Cami up and down the stairs since April, and now it was causing me pain, and they still wouldn't give it to us. I had to do it every day in pain. I had no choice because I just had to do it. A lot of resentment in me built up in me in that sort of situation. Healthcare is very unpredictable. Sometimes we get stuff right away. Sometimes it takes forever. Eventually, we figured out every time we got something right away, it was because Dr. Martel wanted it. We didn't always get something that benefited the parents. On one hand, it was understandable because stair lifts didn't affect Cami's direct physical well-being as a cancer patient. But on the other hand, how is she supposed to get out of her house and go to treatment? Didn't we have laws regarding physically handicapped people? And didn't those laws apply to children? I didn't understand. Everyone just expected the parents to carry Cami because she was a child. No one cared about how much she weighed or how often we had to carry her. I should have gone on strike and not taken her anywhere. We should have hired a lawyer to help us. We were too stressed out to do any of those things. I just did what was the easiest and best for Cami, so I carried her every day. I didn't have time to dwell on injustices that I couldn't control. We had busy evenings, and I wanted to spend any free moment I had with Duke, who was only 2. People always forgot about Duke. Francois drove him to and from daycare every day and basically took care of everything else for him while I was taking care of Cami. Gina had to take care of herself. She was in 2nd grade, and how this has affected Gina and Duke, we don't really know. We just went day by stressful day. We were all in this together. News, Friday, September 6th, 2002. Cami's MRI was very much like the last one, which means things are somewhat stable. The main tumor doesn't seem to have grown, but it hasn't started to shrink either. Irinotecan is stopping the growth, but we need to find a different drug or combination of drugs to start getting rid of that monstrous tumor. Unlike brain tumors, there are not drugs out there that have had any success with spinal cord tumors. This is sad news. The small tumors above and below the main tumor do not seem to have grown, and there are no new ones, so that is good. There is still quite a bit of swelling around the main tumor, which causes pain. Trying to get Cami off of the steroid Decadron, but we can't do it yet because she still has some pain. Cami continues to gain weight due to the Decadron. The last few weeks, she has been doing a fantastic job of changing her eating habits and trying to ride her bike as much as she can. But she continues to gain. People keep telling us as soon as she's off the Decadron, her weight will go down, but we are not there yet. We are realizing we need to make our house more accessible. We are asking for donations to help us do this. We are thankful for so many miracles and hope for more. We are thankful Cami is doing well, and we hope we can find a drug that will cure her. We wish all of our children well as they continue to travel on this incredible journey. The Wynn family. The magic of kindergarten. The decision to send Cami to a private school where there has never been a student in a wheelchair before was a very tough one. On one hand, the decision was made for us with Cami's acceptance letter to the school. That letter, however, was sent out before they knew of Cami's condition. We took time to very seriously consider sending Cami to our local public school. There were problems with our local public school, though. The main problem was the reaction I got from the head of the Department of Special Ed from the district. He told me that children don't learn much in kindergarten anyway. All they really do is play and take naps. So I might as well just keep Cami at home. I was appalled and outraged and felt this man should be fired from his job. The attitude from the top turned me off from the district completely. But another problem was that the kindergarten room in our local elementary school was not handicap accessible. So Cami would have had to go to a different elementary school. Would that public school system ever be able to deal with all of Cami's special needs? I was not sure. And what about Gina? Would I have to separate the girls? Would I have Gina switch schools? Gina had had a wonderful, very successful time at this private school, and I had much better experiences in this private school than at any public school I had worked at or Gina had attended. We decided to keep the girls together and send Cami to the private school. We had no idea what we were going into, and neither did they. We really liked the school, and we loved the teachers, the administrators, the families, and everything else about the school, so we just took a leap of faith. Private schools are expensive. My goal as a wife and mother was always to work to cover the costs of daycare and school for the kids, while Francois paid for everything else. At first, I thought I would stay home with the kids until they started kindergarten. But after the first year of staying home with Gina and experiencing so much isolation, I decided that putting the kids in daycare and going back to work was better for all of us. I went back to work and I worked in education. I had been working in education for almost 10 years, including being an elementary school librarian, a computer teacher, a computer technician. I had been successful in covering the daycare and private school costs of our 3 children up to this point. I was very proud that I had been able to put 3 children through a wonderful daycare and preschool program and was on my way to paying for private school as well. I was very good at my job and was excited to advance in my career, but then Cami got cancer. Because of her handicap caused by cancer, Cami needed round-the-clock assistance. We asked the private school to provide an assistant for Cami during school so that I could go back to work. The school was not willing to provide that, though. We tried to get an assistant for Cami through the medical system or the public school system, but we got the runaround of passing the buck and no one was taking responsibility. Since it was our decision to send Cami to a private school, I decided to quit my job so that I could assist her in the classroom. It was a devastating blow for me, and we lost my income. We were very fortunate that the school came through with some financial aid for us. The best word to describe Cami's kindergarten class was magical. The best description of Cami's teachers were fairy godmothers. Molly and Jane team taught Cami's kindergarten class. They worked together brilliantly. They each acknowledged the strengths of the other and let each other express their passions for teaching and learning. I have worked in many classrooms in many schools and have never met two better teachers than Molly and Jane. They had a lot of experience and absolutely loved what they were doing. They respected each other and didn't try to control each other. Sometimes they divided up duties and sometimes they did things together. It felt like a well-run family. In my opinion, the secret to school success is to have 2 teachers per classroom. Families run better with 2 parents. Classrooms run better with 2 teachers. It does cost more money, but in the long run, it is so worth it. The kindergarten room felt so homey and inviting. It was decorated all over with so much interesting stuff. Everything seemed handmade, not store-bought, which gave the room its character and flair. The children had large tables to sit at instead of desks, and there was a beautiful big rug in one section of the room for group time. I had never seen anything quite like this rug. It was a pond with lily pads, stepping stones, and orange Japanese goldfish. The teachers had had a special rocking chair at one end of the pond, and the children loved to sit on the pond rug and listen to these fascinating women. Molly and Jane always spoke to the children in quiet voices. At first, I wondered how they would be able to discipline if they weren't using a loud voice. That's what I was used to doing, but I soon discovered that the children wanted to hear what they had to say, and so they immediately quieted down when they saw that they were talking and they listened intently. Of course, Molly and Jane always had the most interesting things to say. They spoke to the children as if they were very smart people and could comprehend very complex subjects. This technique worked beautifully, and the children all learned an incredible amount. I learned an incredible amount too. They started off the year with a unit about chickens and other barnyard animals. And when they said chickens, they meant chickens, all kinds of chickens. I never knew that there were so many different breeds of chickens. I enjoyed myself completely in this class. I learned so much about so many interesting subjects. That first month, we learned about chickens, eggs, cows, ice creams, the class treasure box, Simon Rodia's Watts Tower, and my favorite, the artist of the month. That month, there were 2 artists, Marc Chagall and Carl Fabergé. They chose Chagall for his love of painting barnyard animals and Fabergé for his eggs. I never knew anything about Fabergé eggs, and I learned all about their fascinating history and beauty. A year later, Cammie remembered about these eggs and made her own egg out of clay and put jewels all over it. She was so proud of her special treasure. The projects in kindergarten were always glorious. They painted huge chickens from a breed of their choice, huge eggs with glitter, huge cows with crazy designs on them, and huge pastel pictures in the style of Chagall. They learned about the invention of the ice cream cone and made a huge chart of everyone's favorite flavors. They even visited a farm where they saw beautiful barnyard animals, including chickens, and learned how to make butter. This was only the month of September. Each month was a whirlwind of activities and new worlds to discover. After the first few weeks of experiencing this incredible kindergarten class, I decided I had to do something and take action. I wanted to show others what Cammie and I were experiencing. I decided to start making a class website. Website creation had been my hobby for many years. As a family, we loved taking lots of photos of our kids. In fact, a big project that I had accomplished when I was pregnant with Duke was selecting 1,000 of my favorite family photos from the last 10 years, sending them away to be scanned onto CDs. It was wonderful to have these digital photos, and from then on, I always got CDs when I took my pictures in to be developed. I wanted to buy a digital camera, but they had never been good enough and they were always too expensive. I had been watching for the Sony CD camera to get to be 4 megapixels before I would buy it. And it finally did that spring of Cammie's diagnosis. After Cammie's diagnosis, I realized now was the time to spend the money, and I rushed out to get one as soon as we returned from New York. I brought this camera with me to Cammie's kindergarten class every day. I wanted to take pictures of those important things that Cami was doing. I had started doing a family website when we got back from New York, so it was the next logical step to make a website for Cami's class. I had done websites for Gina's kindergarten and first grade classrooms, so I thought I would try it again with Cami's class. There was a lot of time at school when the students were working on things like math, reading, and writing, which I didn't need to help Cami with. I needed something to do. I sat in the back of the room at the teacher's computer, close enough so that if Cami needed me, I would be right there. But I started to do my own thing. I was able to keep up with my email, do cancer research on the internet, and do my family website, and also work on the class website. It turned out to be the perfect arrangement for me. News, Monday, September 23rd, 2002. School is a magical place. The kids are transported into a world of themed projects, group activities, nurturing adults, interesting children, and wonderful lunches. They are doing so well. We are so proud of them. Cami is adding some chemo drugs to her protocol. Along with her regular 1 week on, 2 weeks off of irinotecan, she is adding Lumustine and Vincristine. So far, she is handling the side effects well. This is a 6-week protocol, so she won't be getting another MRI until the end of October. We have been able to decrease her steroid Decadron to a lower dose, and her pain seems to be more under control. Her mood swings are still very unpredictable and difficult to deal with, but at least she is not in so much pain. We are working hard to get a stair lift in our house and some chairs that Cami can feel comfortable in at school. We are trying to get Cami to exercise more on her bike and walk more with her walker. Gina and Duke are doing very well, but continue to suffer from getting less attention than they should. It is a difficult time for all of us. We've been through so much for so long and continued to be challenged. We don't know what will happen. We try to keep our spirits up and enjoy the changing of the season. Best wishes to you all, the Wynn family. October 2002, Cami's school day. I always felt the school, our healthcare, the country, or someone should have provided a person to assist Cami at school. We kept pursuing it, but when it didn't happen, I didn't complain much about it. Going to class with Cami was not only fun for me, it was precious time spent with Cami that I will cherish forever. Cami and I bonded so closely because I knew absolutely everything that was going on in her life. Cami had a very full day. I gave her medicine, got her out of bed, dressed, and ready in the morning. Francois always made something yummy for the kids to eat for breakfast. Francois took Duke to daycare. Cami, Gina, and I drove together to school and handled any problems with parking, weather, or getting into the building. We had more than our fair share of problems. Gina was always such a big help with those times. I lifted the wheelchair out of the back of the car, and I lifted Cami onto the wheelchair and wheeled her into school. I spent my mornings with Cami. I always wheeled Cami in her chair and took the elevator to any of the special classes. I sat with her in the special classes, too, in case she needed anything. We ate lunch together every day. Cami developed very special relationships with the cooks, Roger and Sandy, at school. Because she was on steroids, Cami had a huge appetite, and she liked eating particular things. Roger and Sandy always tried very hard to accommodate her, and she liked to joke with them a lot and always looked forward to this very special part of her day. After lunch, recess was always a challenge. Cami didn't like to have free time. This was a time she had to think about her illness and her disability rather than the task put in front of her. She withdrew and became moody. Being on Decadron and getting that after-lunch laziness didn't help either. Cami grew bored of me, but she didn't want to try to interact with anyone else. It was the most difficult part of the day. Luckily, it only lasted for half an hour. Afternoons always started off with a good story read aloud by one of the teachers. Cami always looked forward to this special time. Molly and Jane helped Cami get involved with an activity during free choice time in the afternoons. I often relaxed on the couch in the afternoons when I was tired. Molly and Jane were so accommodating to me. They let me do whatever I wanted. They let me use their computers. They let me look through their fascinating teacher materials. They even let me take a nap on the couch sometimes. I assisted Cammie by helping her move around in the classroom, getting things for her, taking her around the building, and helping her in the bathroom. I helped Cammie with her tray at the lunchroom, and I spent recess with her. After a full day at school, I lifted Cammie into the car, lifted the wheelchair into the back, and we all went home. Some days we had to go to the clinic for the rest of the afternoon, which meant another lifting of the wheelchair and Cammie in and out of the car, and then we were able to go home. When we got home, I carried Cammie up the stairs and got her situated in her chair for an afternoon of TV watching, activities, and snacks. She sat in her special chair with wheels on the bottom and a stool for her feet and a tray table for her food and activities. Luckily, our house was set up so that I could be in the kitchen doing things and still see Cammie watching TV in the living room. Evenings consisted of dinner, dishes, making lunches for the next day, playing with the kids, playing on the computer, maybe showers and baths, maybe some homework, medicines, and getting ready for bed. Cammie's shower was a big problem. It was a huge production that Francois and I had to do together. Cammie sat in a chair in the bathroom while I got everything ready. Then I lifted her onto a plastic bench that we got in the shower. This was very difficult because I had to step over the shower threshold without bumping my head on the top while squeezing through the small opening of the shower door. Hopefully she would land on the bench without it hurting her too much. I had to support her back while the water showered on both of us. Francois had to dump buckets of water from the tub onto Cammie to get all the areas that the shower didn't get. Then I had to lift her out of the shower and back out onto the chair, which now had to have a towel on it. Then I got her dressed and back into her special chair with the wheels. This all was very hard on my back. I always got wet in the process, so I had to go change at some point. Gina always had to be in charge of Duke during Cammie's shower time. We all had a lot of responsibilities. Cammie had a hospital bed to sleep in because ever since she had surgery on her head, she felt more comfortable sleeping with her head elevated. This position caused her to slip down, and I would often have to give her a scooch back up. Francois could not do this. I had the technique down, and he never figured out how to do it, maybe on purpose. Every night, I helped Cammie get dressed in her pajamas, I lifted her up onto her hospital bed, and I scooched her until she was comfortable. After doing this night after night, this started hurting my back too. Often I would be awakened in the middle of the night for a scooch or two or to go to the bathroom. We had a commode right next to the bed, so all I had to do was lift her down and transfer her over. This was fine for before bed and in the morning, but in the middle of the night it was tough because then I had to lift her back up and scooch her again. Needless to say, I got very tired with my busy schedule and lack of full night's sleeps. My body must have been on superpower crisis mode for over 2 years because I don't know how I handled all that physical work. The effect of cancer on everyone. I was a different person during Cammie's illness. I became a walking zombie on autopilot. It was sort of like nursing a baby, which I had done 3 times. I had to be with Cammie constantly. Francois was doing just as much, if not more, of the work than I was. He had to work full-time, take care of Duke, which included taking him to and from daycare, baths, diaper changes, and whatever else happened when Cammie and I were at the clinic or the hospital. Francois had to drive Gina to gymnastics 3 times a week and make dinner every night. Francois also did Cammie's chemo medicines. He would not let me touch any of the chemo medicines. I did her other medicines such as Decadron, Vioxx, Pepcid, etc. But he must have been a zombie on autopilot too, but I didn't really notice. We didn't spend much time together alone. We just depended on each other every second of every day for everything. Cammie's condition was constantly changing. The cancer was inside her spinal cord. Different parts of her body and different functions were being affected depending on what the cancer cells were doing. Everything was very unpredictable. We could not control the cancer. At every change, we were scared for Cammie's life. It was so emotionally draining for all of us. I yelled a lot and Francois worried a lot. The kids got sort of used to that pattern. When something new was wrong with Cammie, I freaked out and I yelled about it. And when I yelled, Francois worried and he spent late nights on the computer doing research. We would take action about the new change the next day, and we always acted very quickly. We knew that if we didn't, she might not survive. Francois did the calling around. I took Cammie wherever she needed to go. Actually, we handled things phenomenally. Cammie was not supposed to survive past 6 months. We cannot take credit for this. We had wonderful doctors and nurses and medicines that prolonged her life. Cammie was very smart, and she wanted to know all the details of her condition. The bottom line was that Cammie was the one who kept herself alive. Cammie was the one who knew what was going on with herself. She told us when something was wrong. Somehow she knew what was important. Somehow she knew what needed to be taken care of. We did what we had to do for her. We did everything we could for Cammie. The doctors did everything they could for Cammie. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough research to cure Cammie. The doctors tried what they could, but they knew from the beginning that there was nothing that was going to cure her. Chemo definitely helped her, but an irinotecan did a lot. Before we started lomustine and vincristine, Dr. Mortel didn't think those were going to do anything, but he had to try them since they were successful in treating some kinds of brain tumors. As it turned out, those didn't do anything except make Cammie sick. At first, Cammie was fine, but then she started feeling sleepy and nauseous. At the end of a 6-week period, she got a lung infection, which caused her to be hospitalized. Cammie didn't show any symptoms of this infection. It was seen on the MRI that she had at the end of October. If they had known that she had a lung infection, they probably would not have scheduled her MRI. But luckily, everything went fine. They got Cammie on antibiotics in the hospital and she cleared up in a few days. In Cammie's mind, she was just happy that it happened over a weekend so that she didn't have to miss school. More about school and the new house. School was such a godsend for all of us. Cammie loved school. Gina and Duke loved school, and Francois supported us by teaching school. And I loved being with Cammie at school. School was a miracle for us. It kept us focused on learning rather than cancer. There was always, however, an underlying fear for me regarding Cammie at school. I always felt intuitively that Cammie was not wanted at this school, and they would find an excuse not to let her attend anymore. This was a private school, and they could discriminate against anyone they wanted to. Even though their policy was not to discriminate against anyone, they didn't have any other students with disabilities. I sensed something was going on within the school community that made us feel unwanted as well. I felt this because I was used to discrimination. Even though I was a privileged white woman, I was married to an Asian man and since then have learned something about discrimination. At this school, being Asian was okay. Even being mixed race was okay, but being handicapped was questionable. As far as I knew, there had never been a student in a wheelchair before at this school. Cancer was bad too. I didn't know how many cancer patients had been at the school before. I knew they had just had a student pass away from cancer a few years earlier, and I knew people were still grieving for that student, and it was very difficult for many people to see another student with cancer. I didn't know Cammie was going to die. I felt very strongly in my heart that she was going to survive. I believe everyone has to feel that way about any terminally ill child to give them hope. The school also had a student who survived cancer a few years earlier. This student was an inspiration to us. Miracles do happen. Many people felt miracles would happen for Cammie, and that she would beat the odds. Whatever the case, cancer was a fact of life in our society, and we needed to face it. At the school, I felt a sense of powerlessness. I felt at the mercy of the group. I felt at any time if parents complained, they would dismiss Cami from the school. For Cami's sake, I had to put these feelings away and just stay focused on doing what I needed to do to get her through the school day. I had to have faith that they wouldn't cave into society's pressure and reject her. I had to have faith that they would act in a humanitarian way and welcome Cami no matter what her circumstances were. One mother actually challenged me face to face about whether Cami should attend school. I assured her that she should. I felt that mother was not really concerned about Cami, but rather the negative effects she felt Cami was having on her child. I felt this mother was misinformed about Cami, and I felt Cami was not affecting anybody negatively. In fact, academically, Cami pushed the other students because she was very smart, and she set a good example of working hard in school. In terms of her illness and being in a wheelchair, I felt it was good for these kids to experience a reality in our society. It taught them many things about being compassionate and being friends with a child with a disability. I felt Cami had a right to be there, and how dare she come directly to me and challenge me instead of talking to the teachers or the administration. After that conversation with that mother, I felt like I was back in the civil rights era. People tend to overreact if they face something new, and I knew Cami did a lot of valuable educating of others, not just students. In contrast, I became very good friends with many parents who were very supportive of Cami. One day, early in the year, I talked with one mother named Vera, who became a very close friend. Vera was concerned about the stairs in our house and how we managed at home. When I told her we were moving into a handicap-accessible house, she became worried. She asked more about the details of the house because she was concerned that we would have to give up our beautiful home for something worse. She imagined accessible homes as being not very nice. She may have been right. Not many builders of new homes made their homes accessible. But we found out about this as we tried to build our new home. We had to do much of the redesigning ourselves and inconvenienced our builder with any extra requests. The issue about accessible housing made me livid. The houses in our new housing development were being built mainly for older retired couples, yet none of them were being made handicap accessible. It turned out in the end not to be that difficult for the builders to adapt our house. It was more the attitudes we had to go against. People were just against accessibility as if it were a moral issue. Accessible houses with universal design can easily be the standard for housing today, but people just don't want it. It's as if when you make your house accessible, you're putting a curse on it or something. I told my friend Vera about our plans, and she was relieved to know that we would be moving into a nice house. She thought it would be such a shame if our family had to go through even more suffering. Actually, building the new house gave us something to look forward to, and we were very excited about it. Building the new house meant I had to do things during the day, such as go to the cabinet store or the lighting store or the carpet store. And school was so important to Cami that she didn't want to go to those places. And I didn't feel comfortable leaving Cami at school yet, so I postponed going to those places for as long as I could. This was something I didn't want Francois to do either because I wanted to pick out everything for the house. I didn't completely trust his judgment. I wanted to have some control over something. I decided to try leaving Cami at school without me one morning late in October. I was told she did fine until lunch. I had told her that I would be back by lunch, but I was late, and I think she panicked when I was late. She thought nobody else could take care of her during lunch and recess. Lunch and recess were always difficult times for her. Her blood sugar became weird. Decadron made her moody, and recess made her feel left out. I arrived toward the end of recess time to find 2 teachers singing songs to Cami in the classroom. She had refused to go to lunch or eat anything that they brought for her. What a sight it was to see them working together to help her. I felt bad that they had to experience her moodiness and take and take their time out from their lunch break, but they were happy to help. And I made sure that I was never late again. I got Francois to be there with Cammie one time. Francois started coming to lunch anyway after that incident, and that was wonderful. Food was very important to Francois, so if Cammie didn't like the lunch at school, he would willingly stop by a Vietnamese place and pick up something for her. He was so proud to do this for her and show others what Vietnamese food was like. During recess, Francois could keep Cammie much better entertained than I could. Francois and Cammie both loved to play the same kind of games, and this gave me a break and gave Francois a chance to spend some very quality time with Cammie. School took Cammie away from her illness. It transported her mind and spirit to a place that was real, but a place full of fantasy and adventure. A favorite incident Cammie's teacher, Molly, likes to tell about was what happened with Cammie and glitter. Cammie was in a bad mood one day. It was because of the Decadron. She had many mood swings because of the Decadron, and no one was surprised or thought something was really wrong with her. When she got into those moods, however, it was hard to get her out. We usually just had to wait for her mood to pass, which was difficult. That day, we tried to get her interested in something, but nothing was working. But Molly came up with a brilliant suggestion. "Do you want to make a glitter bat?" she asked. Cammie immediately perked up. What was a glitter bat? Molly got out a box where Cammie was to put in a black paper bat that she had cut out earlier that day, drip glue all over it, and then sprinkle different colored glitter on it. Shake it off, and it came out to be a gorgeous glitter bat. Cammie loved it. So whenever she was feeling down, we knew a little glitter would always perk her up. School took Cammie away from her dependence on her family. One day, early on in the school year, Cammie was in Spanish class across the hall from her classroom. I was out in the hall helping Molly hang things on the bulletin board and listening to make sure Cammie was all right. Molly asked me if I ever had any free time to myself. I started crying because of course not. I did not have one moment to myself since April. I pretended it wasn't a big deal, and I pretended that I was handling everything, but Molly knew better. The next day, the assistant principal came and got me out of the classroom. She handed me a cup of hot chocolate and told me to go to the living room and read some magazines or do whatever else I wanted to relax. That was the beginning of Cammie's independence at school. Special teachers. The main difference between private school and public school is the teacher-to-student ratio. In my opinion, more teachers to fewer students is the secret to better education. In the private school, there were 2 teachers per classroom, and there were also more special classes. In most public schools, they usually have about 3 special teachers. There was usually a music teacher, a Phi-Ed teacher, and a librarian computer teacher. Those special teachers usually had to fit every student of the school into a twice-weekly schedule in order to cover all the teachers' prep times. It was an overwhelming responsibility for a special teacher. It could be done, but it was difficult to teach a meaningful curriculum to so many students in short blocks of time. I knew this because I had done it. I had been a computer teacher and a librarian, and I knew how stressful it was to teach every student in the school twice a week during a 20-minute class period. But in this private school, they had 12 special teachers instead of 3. It was hard to believe, but after experiencing this difference, I could not imagine it any other way. There were 2 teachers, each for 6 special areas. There were 2 art teachers, 2 music teachers, 2 Phi-Ed teachers, 2 science teachers, and 2 Spanish teachers, and 2 librarian computer teachers. The special teacher teams work together to develop outstanding curriculum and share teaching duties. The students were exposed to a variety of meaningful, enriching experiences that these special classes had to offer. It is a shame a higher teacher-to-student ratio is not practiced in public schools around the country and not a higher priority to our government. It is expensive. But if we taught all of our children in this way, we would have smarter adults in turn, and then everything would be better. Our children would develop better diplomatic skills to better solve the world's problems. We may have even figured out a cure for cancer by now. It would be a perfect world if all schools were as good as this school. But we don't live in a perfect world, and I believe everything has a reason. There is a reason schools are the way they are. There is a reason for cancer. There was a reason Cami got cancer, although I can't in my wildest dreams figure out what it would be. But there was a reason Cami's diagnosis came the same week we found out that she was accepted to this wonderful school. We were so thankful that we decided to have Cami go to this school. We are so thankful we got some financial aid so that the girls would be able to go to this school. Even though I felt a sense of discrimination sometimes, the school did give us financial aid. So these actions spoke louder than any words or gestures or feelings. They gave us financial aid and they knew about Cami's condition. They supported her. I had mixed feelings of discrimination and support at the same time. There were some people who were absolutely supportive. These were people who were compassionate above all else. Her classroom teachers went out of their way to make Cami feel a very special part of the classroom group. Her special teachers also adjusted their methods so that Cami would feel included. It took a while to get used to what Cami could and could not do, but they all made adjustments and accommodated her beautifully. There wasn't much that she had to do physically for Spanish, science, library, computer, so those classes were fine for her. But there was a lot of movement and dance in music class, and her teacher, Brian, handled it beautifully by letting Cami play special instruments during these times. All the kids were jealous that Cami got to play those special instruments. Physical education was a question in everybody's mind. I could have spent that time reading or doing some activity with Cami, but I knew she wouldn't be part of the group, and she was so bored with me already. Cami was used to doing things in physical therapy, and I actually hoped that she could do some stretching or at least get out of her chair and sit on a mat in PE. But one of the PE teachers, Mr. T, adjusted his schedule so that he could work especially with Cami, while the other PE teacher had the rest of the class. Mr. T got his master's degree in adaptive physical education. I think in the beginning he saw Cami as an opportunity to put his training to work. Cami was to go to PE class with her class, and he would either adjust the class activity or do something that she could do on her own. At first, Cami was not sure how she would do PE. She had been in physical therapy all summer, but this was so different and unknown for her, and at first she wouldn't even try it. I don't know how Mr. T did it, but he gradually got her interested. I think part of the allure was the variety of activities he had for her. Part of Cami's random thinking personality was to do something different all the time. I remember in preschool, her teacher told me, well, when Cami's finished doing the room, we knew it was time to change stuff over. She wanted to explore all the materials. She didn't want to do anything too many times. She always wanted something different. When she was a baby, we called her the Ford Explorer because she would always be exploring something different. Mr. T must have figured this out about her because he always had so many different activities for her to do. When Cami figured out that she would get personal attention from this wonderful man, she quickly turned her attitude around about PE. It soon became her favorite subject. They were actually perfect for each other. Mr. T got to try out millions of different things with her because she was always up for something new. Cami was able to stretch her physical abilities beyond what she thought she would ever be able to do. Cami's physical therapist, Lynn, was excellent and always made her exercises into fun games. Cami was spoiled on Lynn's fun therapy, but PE was even better because Cami was able to do this during her school day, and she felt almost like a regular person. Mr. T's "you can do it" attitude, as well as his patience and compassion for her, developed into true love. Cami loved Mr. T, just like she loved Papa, Goy, Uncle Dave, and a few other lucky men in her life. News, Monday, October 28th, 2002. Cami had an MRI last Friday, and we met with our doctor, Dr. Martell, today to discuss the next plan of treatment. The MRI showed slight growth of everything, so the chemo Cami has been taking has not been working. Dr. Martell offered a different approach with different chemo medicines. We are glad that he has these different chemo medicines to offer. We have some hope for this new protocol, but so far there is no proven cure for what Cami has. If these don't work, then we may need to look for a phase 1 experimental trial. The timing of the next MRI depends on how Cami does. If she gets in pain and has some other kind of symptoms, we will get an MRI sooner and reassess treatment. But if she does fine, we will wait about 6 to 8 weeks for the MRI. Dr. Martell was very impressed by how well Cami was doing today. If she continues to be so well, it gives time to try things. Cami's counts went down for the first time last week, and she got an infection. She had to be in the hospital over the weekend to get antibiotics, but luckily she bounced right back and was feeling better right away, and we were released from the hospital quickly. We think complementary therapies are now very important to get into again. We took a break from them when Cami started school. Cami will continue to see her energy healer, Lorraine, and we think we will start the Tibetan medicine again and the Qigong healer, Master Lin, again too. It's very important to do everything we can to keep Cami's immune system strong and her body feeling good to withstand the strong chemo drugs. Meanwhile, Cami is doing very well in school, as are Gina and Duke. It is a very busy time filled with school activities and friends. I've been with Cami in school and move her from place to place in her wheelchair and help her with physical activities. While I'm at school, I have found time to start remembering and writing Cami's cancer story from the beginning, when Cami was first in pain with the tumor back in March. I have also started the kindergarten website for Cami's class. The kids are looking forward to a fun Halloween. Love to you all, and thank you for your support. The Wynn family. Postponing Cami's birthday and celebrating Halloween. The beginning of school was extremely difficult for us with everything going on. Every year, I had a difficult time organizing a birthday party for Cami since it was so close to the start of the school year. I never really knew who her friends were yet, and I also never knew what was in the fashion for birthday parties. Every year, I overdid it, and I did some big thing, and I invited way too many people. To me, the kids' birthday parties were the most important holiday of the year. This year was the most difficult birthday party ever. I couldn't plan Cami's party because it was so unpredictable how she was going to be feeling. This new chemo was doing some weird things. Mostly it was making her tired and nauseous. I didn't want to plan something and have it turn out to be a disaster, so I kept putting it off. When her birthday came, we did some treats in her classroom, but that was it. She understood because she didn't want to be feeling bad at her party either. So we just waited. Pretty soon it was Halloween. I had fun picking out costumes. Leave it to Target to always have something perfect for us. I got 2 medieval-looking princess dresses. I got one bigger than the other. I thought Cami would fit into the smaller one, so I got that in black and red, which were more her colors, and I got a bigger one in purple and pink, which were more Gina's colors. It turned out I was wrong. Cami couldn't fit into the smaller one at all, but luckily Gina could, so they switched. They were both good sports about it. Gina pretended she was a vampira, and Cami had me pin the scarf over the bottom of her face so she could be Scheherazade. They both looked beautiful. I was so proud of them. I wheeled Cami in the school parade that day. It was a fun day. It was a good ending to a stressful month. November 2002, Cami's birthday. After Cami's lung infection and the bad MRI, Dr. Martell decided we had to do something different with her chemo medicines. Since the MRI showed slight growth of everything, he said we had to stop what she was on and try something different. That meant she even had to stop irinotecan. I remember sitting in a room discussing the situation. He always brought us into another room when the situation was bad. I remember the hopelessness I felt when he told us we had to stop irinotecan. It was extremely difficult for me to let go of this drug. This seemed to be the one thing that actually did something, and now we had to let go of it and dive off the diving board into the unknown again? Not only that, even though Dr. Martell had something else for us to try, he said this would be the last one he had to offer that was not experimental. Fear gripped me, and as he talked about this phase 1 experimental drug. There were drugs that were not proven to be successful, but we were basically using our child to test them. I really didn't want to do that. We stopped irinotecan and the others and started a new chemo called VP16. We had no idea what would happen with VP16. We gave it to her at home, so we didn't have to spend long consecutive afternoons at the clinic, which was a good thing. With irinotecan, she had to go to the clinic every afternoon for a week and then have 3 weeks off and then do it again. Those long weeks at the clinic were so stressful, and the 3 weeks in between seemed so short. Even during those 3-week breaks, we had to go in once a week for counts anyway. With irinotecan, it seemed like we were always at the clinic. So with this new chemo, VP16, we were happy not to have to be in the clinic so much. With VP16, we just had to go in once a week for counts. After the news of having to do a new chemo and that it may be the last one available for Cami, I went into action about her birthday party. And Cami's spirits lifted. Her spirits were lifted so much by Halloween that I thought maybe a party would be good for her no matter what her condition was. I wanted to give her a party. She deserved it so much, and it could be her last one. I just picked the first weekend in November and sent out invitations. Cami started her first round of VP16 on November 1st. She took it orally as a liquid mixed with juice in a cup. She was to take it every day for 3 weeks, then have a week break, and then have her counts checked before she started a new round. Luckily, the first couple of weeks of VP16 went well. She didn't have any problems with sleepiness or nausea. Her party turned out to be a big success. We had it at the house and invited lots of people. Cami was feeling pretty well, and we had a great time. One of the best presents was from her teacher, Molly. It was a big blank book, and on the top of each page, she had written instructions of what activity she was supposed to do for that page. She included lots of fun materials such as stickers, stamps, colored papers, and of course, glitter. Cami worked diligently on that book almost every day at home, and it was one of our greatest treasures. Cami had gotten to take the class mascot home for the weekend of her party. It was a stuffed chicken, and she took it everywhere and wanted to take lots of pictures of it. I think the chicken helped motivate her to be up for her party. The chicken had a great time at the party too. There was even a rainbow at the end of the party, and we took a picture of the chicken up on the window with the rainbow in the background. Right around the time of Cami's party, she started really losing her hair for the first time. Up until this time, her hair had thinned out a little, but she had kept most of it. The doctors kept assuming me that it would fall out, but it never did. It thinned out in the back just like an infant's because she would always lie against it in the back. She always had enough in front for it to look fine. At least in the beginning of the year, we didn't have to worry about not having hair. I wondered what Cami would do when her hair fell out. She didn't like wearing hats very much. She was worried about how she would feel without her beautiful hair. I expressed my concern to her teachers, and they decided to have a hat day at school where everyone would wear a hat. That did seem to break the ice somewhat for Cami. In the beginning of November, after she started taking VP16, the rest of her hair fell out. I thought I wouldn't be emotional about it because I had been expecting this to happen for so long. But one Saturday, we were all at home and I noticed a lot of hair on her clothes. Hairs were getting into everything, so I started brushing it. Clumps of her hair came out into my hands. And I couldn't help it. I started crying. I was so attached to her beautiful black hair. She still had little wisps in the front, so she couldn't see the loss so much. Cami didn't think it was a big deal, but I did. I don't know why. But hair was very emotional for me. I saved her hair in little plastic bags. Every day I would brush it and save it. I still have all those plastic bags in a box that I put away with all of her other things. Her teachers came to my rescue again. Jane gave Cammie a school baseball cap with the school logo on it that fit right in with her uniform that they had to wear. And no one ever said a thing about it other than they liked it. Cammie put it on and proudly wore it every day. That was Cammie. When she needed to do something, she did it. No complaints. The rest of November went well. The class theme was Up North at the Cabin, where they studied about special animals, their tracks, birds, fish, plants, and activities done up north. They had real owls visit the classroom. They made woodblock prints in the style of the famous local artist Betsy Bowen, and went on a field trip to a museum that had lots of stuffed real animals on display. PE was going so well for Cammie that she got up the courage to ride on a saddle. Cammie started developing a love for horses that year, and it was a big thrill for her to be able to ride on a saddle by herself. One of Cammie's biggest highlights of the month, besides her great birthday party, was losing her first tooth. This event made her feel like a regular kid, and she was so happy to share her news with everyone. My biggest highlight of the month was getting the stair lift. Cammie started out weighing 50 pounds in April before she got sick. Now her weight was up to 100 pounds. Having the stair lift was a huge burden literally lifted from me. The lift worked great and not only helped me, it helped Cammie increase her sense of independence. She could have anybody wheel her over to the lift, hold onto their hands, and as she took the few steps to transfer over and then slide onto the chair. She loved to operate the buttons going up and down the stairs. Soon the lift became the big attraction of the house and everyone wanted to ride on it. Thanksgiving was spent as usual at John and Cynthia's house. They always included us in their special family gatherings. Cammie was feeling all right, but was very moody. She didn't interact with people very much and she couldn't move around the house at all. We were prepared for this though, because we brought along Molly's activity book. Cammie liked doing Molly's book so much, she sat at the table, worked on the book almost the whole evening. It was a sad Thanksgiving for me. Just 1 year ago, Cammie was fine. December 2002, Gina's birthday. Gina's birthday was coming up the first part of December, but with everything going on, I had trouble planning her party too. My mother and brother were coming for a visit and would be there on her birthday, so I just wanted to see what would happen. It was very sad to see my brother's reaction to Cammie when he first saw her. My brother David was very close to the girls because he had lived in town with us here for a few years when they were younger. Cammie especially loved Uncle Dave and developed a special relationship with him. David thought Cammie would be a hockey star just like him. He loved being active with her and horsing around with her. We hadn't seen Dave so much lately since he had moved to another city. He made a special trip to be with Cammie and us near the holiday season. In our family, it seemed some people got along better with certain people than others. Gina seemed to get along better with women generally than men, but Cammie got along with some women, but she got along better for the most part with men. Duke seemed to do well with both. I think it had something to do with different personality traits more than being a man or a woman. Westerners have 12-month zodiac signs to explain some personality traits. Easterners use the 12-year zodiac calendar. According to the Eastern calendar, my brother was a monkey, just like Francois. Cammie was a rat, and rats and monkeys are supposed to get along well. Cammie always seemed to get along really well with rats and monkeys. Also in our family, whether you were a random thinker or a sequential thinker played a big part in how we all got along. The women in our family tended to be more organized, sequential thinkers. Gina and I were that way for sure. Cammie, however, was very much a spontaneous, random thinker, just like Francois. I think that's why she got along so well with most of the men in our family. The men tended to be spontaneous, random thinkers. Cammie could somewhat get along with organized, sequential people, but for the most part, those kind of people didn't get Cammie. It was hard for me to get Cammie when she was very young. She was always busy and hard to keep up with. She didn't stick with a story like Gina did. She was always getting into everything, especially Gina's organized stuff. Cammie was always delightful and funny, but she usually wanted to do something different from what Gina or I wanted to do. When Cammie was very young, I didn't appreciate her random traits. I tended to make friends with people who were spontaneous and random. Francois was spontaneous and random, so as Cammie got older, and especially after she got sick, I was able to totally get her. Even though it was sad to see David's reaction when he came in, it was amazing to see his transformation in the first few minutes of his visit. At first, he was going to break down and cry, but because Cammie did not even look like herself. She was at her heaviest. Her face was puffy and red. She was sitting in her chair at the computer, and she couldn't come running up to give Dave a big hug like she usually did. But David was great. He got right into the computer game that she was playing and realized that she was still that fun-loving person. He learned about her world and figured out that she liked Bratz dolls and I Spy books. He got her like he always got her, and she loved him for that. They stuck together for the rest of his visit. My mother, Nana, as the kids call her, came a few days later. Nana was an organized, sequential person just like me. She loved the kids very much, and she was great at planning projects for them. Cammie especially loved Nana's projects. I think Nana, however, had a hard time getting Cammie's spontaneous, random nature. With Cammie on steroids, I think it was even harder for Nana to relate to Cammie. Nana did a weird thing when she came into our house, which I felt was very symbolic of how many people must have felt when they entered our home. She had bought a mask for the kids, and she wore it into the house to surprise them. It sure surprised us. I felt it was symbolic for having to put a mask on to cover up the sadness that she felt for us. I felt it was more than she could bear, so she had to cover her face. There were many people who didn't come into our lives very much, and I think it was because of sadness. The sadness was more than they could bear. My mother was brave, and she did her best to have a good time with us. We had a wonderful birthday dinner for Gina at a nice restaurant with just the family. After my mother and brother left, I decided Gina needed more than just a family birthday party. She had gone through so much, and she deserved a birthday with her friends, too. We decided to have a party at the house, just like Cammie's. It was almost Christmas by this time, but luckily, lots of people showed up. Luckily, a few mothers were nice enough to stay and help out with the party. It started out fine, but something happened that upset Cammie. Because of the Decadron and because maybe of the excitement of the party, she had a tantrum. I had to bring Cammie into another room and stay with her so that she wouldn't hurt herself. Nobody else could do this. Francois didn't like restraining her hands. So if he was with her when she had a tantrum, Cammie would end up scratching or hitting herself. I didn't like restraining her either, but Cammie and I had an understanding that whenever she had a tantrum, I would hold her hands down. I would talk gently to her and tell her what I was doing, and she would nod as she kept crying. She couldn't control herself, so I had to. Whenever she calmed down, we would talk about what just happened, and she understood that it was just her medication and it was not her fault. So Cammie and I ended up missing most of Gina's party, but luckily Francois and the other mothers took care of everything. I don't think Gina really cared that Cammie and I missed most of her party. Francois took pictures of the party and it looked like Gina had a fantastic time. At least Cammie got to watch Gina open her presents at the end of the party, and we all enjoyed that. Gina understood as she always understood, and she was a great sport with everything. Getting ready for the holidays. Along with the new VP16 chemo, Cammie was to take 2 other drugs that would act in complementary ways to the chemo. Those were Accutane and Vioxx. The Vioxx was a liquid, and the dosage was easy for Cammie to take. Vioxx was supposed to inhibit blood flow to the tumor, and since there was no side effects, she would take it every day indefinitely. She started taking Vioxx sometime in November and continued taking it along with everything else for about 1.5 years. Now we know there are heart and stroke risks associated with long-term Vioxx use. It was scary to think about what long-term effects all of Cammie's treatments would have had on her. Accutane was also a drug we were very worried about what effects it would have on Cammie in the future. We had to sign a paper that said that Cammie was not pregnant. Apparently, this drug caused birth defects. Cammie was only 6 years old. Weren't they concerned about what it would do to her? Apparently not. This was just another case of trusting our doctor. Cammie's Accutane dosage was about 8 times what a normal teenager took for acne. Cammie had to take 8 Accutane pills every day. These pills were not as big as the temozolomide dragon pills that she had to do with radiation, but they were close. Pills were so hard for Cammie to take, and she had to take 4 in the morning and 4 at night every day. Miraculously, she did it, and with no complaints. I think Cammie took all of her medicine without complaining because intuitively she knew she was getting better. Even though she was very overweight, she was not in pain and her function was not getting worse. She was able to go to school every day and enjoy her daily routine. December was a very fun time at school and in her classroom. Cammie loved the holidays, and her class sure celebrated a lot of them. This month, her class did a lot of baking for the holidays as well. On Monday mornings, her class had mini course Mondays, which were done with parent volunteers. On these days, parents would take small groups of students into a small kitchen across the hall and do projects with them. Parents signed up for alternating craft days or cooking days. Those mini course sessions were done throughout the year and worked great to get Cammie motivated to go to school on Monday mornings. The December mini course days were devoted to holiday crafts and baking. Cammie could not have wished for anything better. Cammie discovered her love for baking and brought her love home, and we baked many wonderful treats that holiday season. Another very interesting theme her class focused on during the holidays was called the Teddy Bear Hospital. The class set up a pretend hospital and treated teddy bear patients. They used the Teddy Bear Hospital as an opportunity to teach about raising money for a cause. They were to do chores at home and bring in the money that they made and donate it to Children's Hospital. They did many community service projects throughout the school. In Cammie's classroom, they had already collected socks and toiletry items in the fall for a homeless shelter. Now they were doing this hospital project as part of caring and compassion during the holiday season. They had been doing this for years and had considered not doing it this year because they thought it might be too overwhelming for Cammie. But on the contrary, I told them to do it, and it was great for Cammie. The child life specialist at Children's Hospital, which is Cammie's hospital, had been offering since the beginning of the school year to come to Cammie's class to talk to them about cancer. But Cammie hadn't been ready. We kept asking her and she kept saying no. I didn't exactly know why, except that she didn't want to talk very much about what was going on with her medically at school. She wanted to focus on school and what she was learning. We had 2 wonderful child life specialists, Sarah and Kirsten, who had been helping Cammie since she first arrived at the hospital back in April. I don't have words to describe how much they helped Cammie through everything. One of them would be there almost every time that Cammie was either in the clinic or in the hospital. They could always think of something for Cammie to do. This was not easy because Cammie was easily bored and run-of-the-mill activities would bore her. They caught on to Cammie's tastes and surprised her with special games and activities. I will never forget how they let her use one of the laptops with the I Spy treasure hunt game on it. She played that game the entire day she had to wait for her head surgery in August. I don't know what we would have done without that. They also found games about princesses, games with horses, projects with colored sand, painting fake stained glass windows, painting pots for plants, painting birdhouses, making volcanoes, and much more. Cammie looked forward to every visit to see what Sarah and Kirsten had in their special cupboards. For Cammie's school visit, Sarah and Kirsten suggested doing projects for the whole class. This was the hook that Cammie loved. She didn't just want to talk about cancer. She could show them what kind of fun projects she got to do in the hospital. She then became excited to have them come to school. We planned a day for them to come in December. Both Sarah and Kirsten came, and Cammie was so proud to sit in the front of the class with them as they talked about a variety of cancer-related and hospital-related subjects. True to form with Cammie, there was much joking and laughter. I was so proud of her. They showed the class a doll that had a port needle sticking in it. I was glad for this because Cammie never wanted to show anybody her needle. She was always very protective and being very private. I thought it was good for the kids to see what Cammie had to do all the time. After the presentation, the class divided up at tables, and Sarah and Kirsten had brought a number of projects to do with them. These were not typical projects that Cammie had been expecting. They were much better. They brought a small bag for each person filled with various medical supplies. They brought small dolls to dress in hospital gowns, each one having a little port inside. They had special worksheets and coloring sheets, but the best part was the blood station. They had the kids pour corn syrup into small Ziploc bags and put in cinnamon candies for the red blood cells and other candies for the white cells and platelets. They learned about blood by making it. It was wonderful. We were so thankful to Sarah and Kirsten for that very special day. I haven't talked yet about school assemblies. Another great thing about this school was that they had an assembly in the auditorium every Monday morning and Friday afternoon. This was a chance for the whole school to get together, sing songs, see skits, dances, or musical performances. When we first tried assembly, Cammie thought it was too loud and overwhelming and she wanted to leave right away. But gradually, as she felt more comfortable in the school, she attended assemblies for longer periods of time, and eventually they became very important to her and she could not miss them. The last assembly before winter break was a performance of winter and holiday songs by a few classrooms. Cammie enjoyed watching and listening to these songs very much. At the end of the performance, the whole audience was invited to sing Jingle Bells. Cammie started singing and rocking her head back and forth in time with the music. I broke down into tears because this could be Cammie's last Christmas. The music of all the loving people surrounding us overwhelmed me with sadness. How could such a horrible thing have happened to such a healthy child? I will never know. Christmas was always stressful for me, and it probably is for many people. This Christmas, I had added on the worry of an approaching MRI. We hadn't had one since the end of October, and we were especially nervous about this one because it would determine our next course of chemo. It was scheduled for December 27th, so we tried to enjoy Christmas. I had been so busy being in school with Cammie every day and planning Gina's birthday party that I didn't have much Christmas stuff ready for the kids. We had a nice brunch to celebrate Christmas with John and Cynthia the Sunday before Christmas. We didn't stay long because Cammie wasn't feeling very good. Normally, food always motivated her to go places, but we had just started lowering her Decadron, so she didn't have much of an appetite that day. I don't remember exactly when or why we decided to start lowering her Decadron. So much was going on that month, I think it just happened in the midst of everything. That definitely explained her tantrum at Gina's party and was the reason that I encouraged her interest in baking. When Cammie got less Decadron, her appetite would almost completely shut down. We always wanted to lower her dosage and get her off, but bad things would always happen. In the summer, when we weren't giving her enough, she had tremendous pain. In the fall, we were told not to lower it because her tumor had grown so much, she still needed it for pain relief. In fact, in the past, whenever we tried to lower it, she would feel pain, so we just stuck with her dosage and let her gain weight. I think I made the decision to start lowering the dosage this time because she was getting so uncomfortable with her weight gain. I must have lowered it, and this time she was able to tolerate it without pain. Not having pain was so great, but she pretty much stopped eating food completely. Goy, Cammie's cousin from Texas, decided to come and visit us on Christmas Eve. That was our Christmas miracle and the most wonderful present for Cammie. Francois made a turkey and we had a regular Christmas dinner. Even though Goy was there and Cammie was completely happy, she didn't eat much of anything. I remembered I started to worry. Christmas morning was a flurry of present opening. All of our relatives had sent amazing gifts, which was lucky because I hadn't gotten anything for the kids. We spent the day playing with toys and relaxing, and it ended up being a very good Christmas. The next day, Cammie and I went to the clinic to get Cammie's port accessed and have a physical exam before her MRI. Because it was a holiday, we had to go to the short stay unit of the hospital instead of the clinic. Cammie's regular hospital nurse examined her, and I told the nurse my concerns that Cammie had not been eating or drinking very much over the week. The nurse thought it would be best to keep Cammie overnight to watch her and make sure everything was all right for her sedation the next day. I hadn't been prepared to stay overnight, but it sounded good to do something precautionary. Cammie was given fluids to prevent dehydration. This sounded good too. Francois, Gina, and Duke came over to the hospital later with dinner and pajamas for us. They stayed and watched a movie and then went home. Cammie was fine when she went to sleep that night. I went to sleep on the reclining chair next to the hospital bed, using my coat as my blanket. My new winter coat I had purchased with money some friends had given me was always my best blanket in the cold hospital. I always wore a turtleneck shirt as my pajamas in the hospital because it was both comfortable and warm as pajamas and fine looking the next day as clothes. The next morning, Cammie woke up breathing hard. Apparently, some of the fluids had entered her lungs. The doctor who was to sedate her for the MRI came in and examined her. No MRI today. Up to the 4th floor for us. Cammie was put on antibiotics and cultures were sent to the lab to be grown for the next few days. They never found out what it actually was. I don't know how I knew, but I knew that if we just increased Decadron a little, she would clear up and start eating and drinking again. But nobody believed me because Decadron had nothing to do with the lungs. I knew that Decadron made everything in her body function better and her lungs would clear up themselves. I was very anxious about getting this MRI done. If things weren't getting better, we may be on the road to phase 1 experimental drug. This meant we would probably have to travel somewhere for the initial start of the drug, and hopefully the rest could be administered here. Dr. Martell had mentioned some things going on in other states, but he wouldn't elaborate on anything until he saw her MRI scan. He never told us anything in advance. He couldn't because cancer was so unpredictable. Dr. Martell had been on vacation over Christmas. I always felt mad at Dr. Martell for taking vacations. Not only could we not take vacations, but we ended up sick in the hospital during break and we needed him. Actually, I was glad that he took vacations. Otherwise, how could anyone do this impossible job? I can't imagine anybody working in children's oncology. It must be the most heartbreaking job ever. Dr. Martell got back from vacation and came in especially to see Cammie either that Monday or Tuesday before New Year's Eve. He listened to my idea about Decadron and he upped Cammie's Decadron dosage. It was either the antibiotics finally kicking in or the Decadron because Cammie started getting better. MRIs were very hard to schedule for Cammie because she always needed 2 one-hour slots and she needed special doctors to sedate her. But luckily, Dr. Martell was there and now he made everything happen. He got her in on January 2nd. He must have wanted this MRI as soon as possible too. Our hospital stay ended up being 8 days. What a great way to spend winter break. Francois always stayed with Gina and Duke while I stayed overnight with Cammie in the hospital. Francois and the kids visited us during the days and played in the playroom. Gina went over to friends' houses a lot. Our good friend Maria took Duke into her daycare for some of the time. By the time New Year's Eve came, we were all wiped out. On New Year's Eve, Cammie and I watched The Cosby Show before she went to bed. The only channel the hospital had was Nickelodeon. At least they had something, but we got tired of the same old shows on that one channel. We did projects, read, and watched movies during the day. After a while, those things got tiring too. Cammie didn't mind it as much as I did. I think she got scared every time she went into the hospital, and she was just glad that we were taking care of her. She loved watching The Cosby Show, though. She loved watching it at night to put her to sleep. She would never watch it at home, just in the hospital. It was her hospital ritual. The last thing we did that year was laugh with Bill Cosby and his TV family. News. Tuesday, December 10th, 2002. Cami is doing so well, we are waiting for her next MRI, which is scheduled for a few days after Christmas. She is currently taking the chemo drug called VP16, as well as the drugs Accutane and Vioxx. She is doing well with these drugs. They are taken orally, which means she can take them at home and she doesn't seem to be having any bad side effects. Long-term VP16, however, has been shown to cause leukemia, so we can't count on this drug long-term. VP16 is a phase 2 drug. This is the last phase 2 drug for Cami. This means that if VP16 doesn't work, and we will know that with her next MRI, we may think about putting her into a phase 1 trial. There are 3 phases of drugs. Phase 3 means it's safe and commercially available. Phase 2 means it's been shown to be safe, but there is not enough testing done for it to go on the market yet. And phase 1 is a drug that they will be testing to see if it is safe. If you go into a phase 1 study, they are testing for toxicity levels, which means they will give you more and more of the drug to see how much you can tolerate. This can be very dangerous. There is no proof that any phase 1 drugs work for what Cami has. We are asking you, our family and friends, to talk to everyone you know about Cami to see if you can come up with some ideas for us. There are independent clinics throughout the country that are not affiliated with hospitals or universities. Perhaps there's a clinic somewhere that we are not aware of that would have treatment for Cami. Cami has an anaplastic astrocytoma grade 3 spinal cord tumor. It is different from a brain tumor, but there is not very much research on spinal cord tumors, so doctors apply brain tumor research. We are looking for something for pediatric spinal cord tumors. We have already searched the internet for these terms, but it doesn't hurt to search again. You never know when something new may come out. We are also looking for people who have survived malignant spinal cord tumors to see what treatments they have used, so please ask around. Thank you. The kids are enjoying school so much. We are so lucky that we are able to focus our lives around school right now. We treasure these moments when we can live a regular daily routine. We are so lucky to be living in a wonderfully supportive environment, and through this, we have learned to accept more love and friendship than ever before. Life means so much more to us now. We want to do something different this holiday season. We are looking for something very personal and meaningful. We are exploring the idea of having the children create art that will be made into cards and journals that we will be able to sell to make money for Cami's treatments. Not only will this benefit Cami for treatment, it will help lessen our pain, give us more hope, and build self-esteem and understanding of the emotions we are feeling around this time and around the disease. We have learned so much during Cami's illness. We have had unlikely people talk together. We have faced being disabled in public. We have posted family photos on the internet. We have talked about and shared details about Cami's disease. We have told people not to ask us what they can do for us, but to just do it, all for the sake that there might be someone out there who might have an answer that will save Cami's life. One person can make a difference. Thank you all so much for your support. We wish you all a very meaningful holiday season. Best wishes for health, happiness into the new year. Much love from our family, Francois, Catherine, Gina, Cami, and Duke.